Hello everybody, and this is Demon Phoenix, and we are back with another Witcher 3 video. Now this one is another sort of themed build, but after playing around with it, I actually found it really enjoyable. So one of the things that I really like about the patch and the rebalance is that it changes a lot of the skills and it makes things a lot more viable. And one of the things that it changes is the bonus from the Wolven set. Now the Wolven set is a gorgeous set. I think it's one of the really good looking ones. So we have made a bleed and burn build. So shout outs to Prodigy, Twisted Firestarter, we love that. Shout outs to Thanos and things like all this for a drop of blood. And as you can see, even in the Nilfgaard camp, which is still, although they're much toned down, still a good place to test how powerful your builds are, because there's a lot of enemies and they're slightly higher level than you. This is a build that you can build pretty early in the game and gradually build up. This is a level 53 version, but you can have the stuff for it a lot earlier than that. And as you can see, we are using rotation on the chest. So rotation was changed because it used to just do direct damage. But now the thing that it did was it stopped Igni from burning, which is the main draw of using Igni. And now that has been corrected, so you can see it basically turns it into like monster hard sweep, because it burns everything, which stops the enemies from attacking you, and the burn does a ton of damage. But what we've also got was, this was going to be an adrenaline burst build, because I figured if adrenaline burst was anything like it was originally, then it wore off after about 30 seconds, and then you could kill things with the damage over time. So it's going to be a damage over time build. But adrenaline burst seems to be bugged. I can't figure out or see it doing anything at all, if I'm honest. So this is the build that we came up with, and I changed it to Conductors of Magic, and this actually does a couple of things for the build. Conductors of Magic makes Igni do a lot of direct damage whilst it's still doing the burning as you do the area of effect with the rotation on the chest piece. But we've also got the Wolven set, and the other part of this is a bleeding build. And so what Conductors of Magic does is it lets you put on that bleeding, which is completely separate from Conductors of Magic, but then the Wolven set now gives each instance of bleeding applied increases sword damage. Each adrenaline point increases the possible number of bleeding effects. So you can be putting these bleedings on, but also using Quen, and we have Griffin School techniques and sign intensity runes. So Quen is actually doing quite a lot of direct damage because of Conductors of Magic as well. So we should have 6 Greater Glyphs of Igni in the, 2 in each of the boots and the gauntlets. I forgot to put them in the boots, but you can put 6 Greater Glyphs of Igni in. I also wanted this to be a non-alchemy build, because alchemy is so strong. I have it in all of my builds, so I figured I would try and make one without it, and I'm actually still really pleased with this, and it's ended up as a really fun build. So we've got Muscle Memory, Precise Blows, Crippling Strikes, which is to add the bleeding effect, and this has been balanced out so it actually does a good amount and scales and everything, so that's actually really quite useful now. I was going to go with Deadly Precision, but in the end I decided not to. You could have Arrow Deflection. There's one skill on here that is actually replaceable, so you could have Arrow Deflection or Magic Trap if you wanted to take care of things there. Magic Trap maybe even slightly better. We've got Undying, because this is not a defensive build, and it's very, very useful because it does have some adrenaline themed things, with part of the Wolven bonus being focused on adrenaline. So we also have Razor Focus, so we instantly get an adrenaline point, and that means the first time that you would die in combat, the Undying takes care of that. Melt Armor is not worth having still, because very few enemies have armor, so I wouldn't bother with that one on an endgame build. But Firestream is very useful because the direct damage really adds up. And Pyromaniac I had on the build originally here, but is replaceable, so I would take the skill out, and I'll show why in just a second. I'll demonstrate it. So you can either put Quen Intensity, Sustain Glyphs, Magic Trap, or the Arrow Deflection skill there in the slot that is Pyromaniac at the moment. And then we've got all the Quen skills, especially if you put the Quen Intensity one there. So you've got Active Shield for healing. And the reason that you take Pyromaniac off is it's unnecessary here, because you'll always have 100% burning anyway, because we've got a lot of Igni Sign Intensity. So Pyromaniac doing literally nothing, so not worth having. So you would swap that slot and put Quen Intensity or something like that. We've got all of the Quen skills there so that it's doing a good amount of damage. I don't have Whirl on this build because it doesn't trigger bleeding, because it's not a normal fast attack. Only normal fast attacks trigger Whirl. So you could put the Arrow Deflection there, or you could put Magic Trap, or you could put the Quen Intensity to further boost that blue mutagen. You get the idea. So then we have No Alchemy, and to make up for No Alchemy I'm using a very underused skill, not Griffin School techniques, we use that all the time. That's what gives you a ton of stamina regeneration and a bit of sign intensity. We've got adrenaline burst, so that using signs adrenaline generates adrenaline points. That goes very well with the Wolven bonuses and the Wolven set in general. And then we've got metabolism boosts. Now I always knew this about a metabolism boost, but it was never worth using before. It's bugged. Adrenaline points will be consumed to reduce the toxicity of drinking potions by 33% per point. Does not affect mutagen decoctions. So basically it reduces the cost of any potions, and it's supposed to consume your adrenaline, as i.e. use them up. But it doesn't. It's bugged. And because nobody used it, and nobody realised this, because like I knew it, but there was no point using it before on Euphoria builds where you wanted to keep the toxicity high. Fast metabolism already better. You already had a load of skills in the alchemy tree anyway, but this is like a ghetto delayed recovery, so it's not as good because the potions don't constantly stay up. Or rather, it's more akin to fast metabolism. So you can see that we've got the adrenaline burst skill that's letting us build adrenaline, the little red bar at the top left under your stamina. And so you can build up adrenaline whilst casting signs, and then later on I'll demonstrate how the potions get reduced. So one of the things I really like about this being conductors of magic is obviously some enemies aren't affected by bleeding, so you don't want to make the whole build around bleeding. So Firestream actually does a lot of damage. Now this might not look like a lot, but if you think about it, you're fighting an earth elemental, and this is a strong enemy at my level, right? On deathmatch, this is all on deathmatch, and usually with like a maxed Euphoria build, these things have really high defense anyway. But with Firestream, you can see that whereas you'd be doing like 5,000 a hit with a max Euphoria build against these type of enemies, you are actually ripping off huge chunks of its health and just getting in little hits here and there, and you're doing it from distance. So this is, I found, to be a really fun build. I actually really like it. So even though it's not getting burnt, you've got the damage from Quen and the damage from Firestream and the actual hits with Igni instead of the burning to take on enemies that aren't getting affected by the bleeding and burning. So I actually found it to be a really fun and really balanced kind of build. So if you're looking for a slightly different playstyle, I would recommend checking it out, because I actually really enjoyed this one. So here you can see, even if enemies are trying to split you up, one of the things about Igni is, you would cast it, maybe hit one of these foglets, but with rotation it hits all around. Whilst they're burning, they're incapacitated, you can hit them with the bleeding, and you can see that those were like high level deathmatch foglets, and they just got melted. So again, we were saying about some creatures in the game don't get affected by bleeding, like wraiths are part of these, and you still have everything available to you to deal with them, because you have things like you've got your bombs. So here I don't actually use the superior moon dust, I'm using Erden instead, but you could very easily use both. And you can see that whilst you're still having to dodge and maybe use your swallow to keep your health up, things like that, they actually do take a decent amount of direct damage from Quen and from active shield when you need to get your health back. So you see that you've got active shield, the first that secondary Quen skill there, and we've also got the first Quen skill, which knocks them back and deals a little bit of damage, and we've got the very last skill in the Quen tree on the signs abilities, and that makes it do extra damage from what the enemies would have dealt to you, and it returns the damage. And then Conductors of Magic adds everything in to that. So if you think that like your sword damage can be really high at sort of whatever it'd be at level 53 or anything like that, you can actually have this in place from quite early on and still make use of it. So as you can see here, this could be a quite difficult fight because they're not susceptible to bleeding or anything like that, but you can still slow them down with Erden, and Igni will knock them back and still do a lot of damage, because Conductors of Magic is adding 50% of your sword damage onto these direct hits from Igni. So it's very useful, and I just found it to be really fun. And because you've got the metabolism boost skill, you can still use potions and heal up, and if you really needed, you've got White Rafford Decoction, which is actually a potion, for some emergency healing. And same thing here, we're fighting these centipedes here, they're susceptible to burning, you can use Erden still, and you've got good stamina regeneration, so you have access to your signs pretty quickly, but his health just absolutely melts there, because you've got Crippling Strikes and the Wolven build bonus from having the 6 pieces of Wolven gear, and the adrenaline gain, and the burning from Igni, so it's really quite useful. So this little clip just demonstrates when you're fighting Kikimors and things like that, you'd want to use Superior Golden Oriole, maybe a couple of other potions, but particularly Superior Golden Oriole. Now, you're going to see exactly how metabolism boosts worked and what I mean about it being bugged. So a reminder that its description says it consumes the adrenaline points. We've gone into battle, got 1 adrenaline point from Razor Focus, and then got another one by using Superior Maribor after that. So that's 2 adrenaline points straight away. Very quickly get up to 3 because the Wolven set gives adrenaline bonuses as well. And as you can see, I'm going to use some more of my more of my potions in just a minute. And it actually doesn't cost you any extra toxicity to use them. So here we've got Golden Oriole. They're applying a lot of the Kikimos are applying a bit of extra damage, but it doesn't really matter because you've got all that burning and everything else. Hit them with the bleeding, and if you want, you can just add the bleeding on and then even back away. So like, as you can see here, they do take, so that thing's losing about 15% of its health very quickly, just from it draining away. So yeah, really cool build, really like it. This is one of the things that I was going to show as well. So this is enemies that are susceptible to Ignite. Now you can still knock things over with ARD, get instant kills on some things because we've got pretty decently high sign intensity and it scales properly now as you level up. It doesn't become useless in New Game Plus. But Rock Fiends, these are actually susceptible to Ignite, and as you can see it hits all around. I hit one in a minute, there's one behind me, I didn't even realise it, and then it gets set on fire, and that's rotation, you know, taking care of the crowd control. Oh look, there's another one. So you can apply the bleeding, back off again. Quen does a big chunk of damage there, did another 1000 damage, and then the fire just burns it out. It's so strong. And it's a really fun effect. So this is the clip that shows how metabolism boosts actually work. So you take quite a lot of damage, do bear that in mind, but the crowd control on things like this, I mean, one of the things that you have to consider is you're never really going to go and fight in the Nilfgaard camp. It's just a good way to show off how strong a build is and if it can deal with Deathmarch crowd control. But this is on Deathmarch, and you can see that it really does a good job of crowd control here. And with us having 3 adrenaline points, notice that I just applied a ton of potions there, and they all cost 0 because metabolism boosts reduce it to 0 cost when you've got 3 adrenaline boosts. Adrenaline points. And there we had the damage from Igni and Quen doing like over 1000 with the direct hits, and then you are getting a ton of fire damage afterwards, and you can hit something with bleed and then burn it, and that's why they synergize really well with this build. And it uses the Wolven set, which is one that, you know, a lot of people have been saying, can we make the Wolven set work with its new bleeding bonuses? Just a very quick last thing, this has 3 Greater Velez runestones to add 15% sign intensity on both swords, which is very useful for the direct damage. If you want to lean more into the bleeding side, you could put 1 or 2 or even 3 Greater Divana runestones. So you could mix those up between Greater Velez and Greater Divana. Really fun build, really enjoyed it. If you like this video, then please like, comment and subscribe, and I hope that if you do try out this build, you have fun with it as well. I will be doing a couple of other builds coming up, quite a few, so stay with me on the path.